this video we're going to have a look at using the 3D camera tracker and placing some different objects in the scene and then hiding them with masks. So this bit of footage is just walking around a corner. So we're going to start by tracking the camera. So you're going to need to go to the motion tracking window and open up. Make sure you've got the video layer selected. And press track camera. So this is going to start analyzing the footage frame by frame and generating 2D and 3-dimensional points in the footage. So this is going to give you reference points to which you can create objects that can be placed on planes within the footage. So the tracking points are generated by the computer, and you can adjust whether they're just 2D or whether they're 3D as well. So just giving it about a minute for it to analyze this footage, so you can see it's giving you a countdown of frames on the left. And when this is done, we should see a range of colorful indicators appear on the footage. Now these will change as you scroll through the footage because you get different reference points. So here they come now. Right, so you can see it's generated all these colorful X's. These X's replicate like a track point that we can then attach objects to. So you can see I can adjust the track point size. Now this might be handy on footage where you have lots of interference, say with trees and things like that. And also the target size, which is what we're going to create our plane with. So what I'm going to do now is to show you the difference. I'm going to move my camera around the corner and show you. You can see it's generating all these different track points. I'm going to select one on the ground here. So it generates a position by selecting 3, and then I'm going to right click and create a text object, and right click and create a shadow catcher and light. So you should see all these options down the bottom of your screen. Right, so we're going to start with the text and we're going to adjust its position. So to start with, you can see now it has X, Y, and Z locations for all different principles. So orientation is the original setting of the object, so we're just going to rotate it so I can get it to the point where it's facing as if we were directly walking up the path. So rotation, I can adjust this as well. So you can see the orientation point sets the default for 0. Now you can see when I've brought my object up for rotation to start with, that I'm getting a shadow there, and that's because I've got the shadow catcher created. Now I'm just going to change the color of my text just to begin with, so it's white. So it's very easy to see the shadows because you can see the shadow on the actual text object, but also a shadow in the background. So I'm just going to pick white. So you can see I'm getting shadow on the actual object at the moment. Next thing I'm going to do is have a look at my shadow catcher. So the shadow catcher is an object again. It has all those orientation, scale, and position points as well. So you can see I can actually flip it over. But I'm going to set my orientation to begin with, and then I'm going to scale it up so that I can catch more of the shadow. So you can see the full word text there as well. Now to make my life easy, I'm going to go to the material options and turn the accept shadows to on. So now I'm getting like a solid where I can see the shadow being generated, and this will make it a bit easier to position my light later on. What I'm going to do to get started is I'm going to actually copy the position points for the text and match the light to those position points so I can find it, because in my window at the moment I can't see it at all. So all I'm going to do here, I can start by dragging them myself, but that will still be quite hard, so I'm just going to copy and paste the coordinates in one at a time, and you'll notice as I'm doing this it changes the actual shadow. And there you go. So now I can see my light is in the center of the frame, and you can see the X, Y, and Z axes on it. So I'm going to start to move it. Now remember, when I'm dragging on the slider, if I hold shift, it allows my values to move a lot quicker. So I've moved the light in front, and now I'm elevating it a bit, and you can see that's changing the shape of my shadow. So you can see when I go behind, the shadow comes in front, and as I rotate it around. Now with this one, I'm not going to perfectly match it to the shadow in the footage, but I'm going to get some direction on it. So just adjusting the 3 values there. So you can see, fairly happy with that for the moment. So now I have the option of going back in and looking at the shadow itself. So you can see the shadow in this footage is quite hard at the moment, so it's got a very defined edge, which I don't want to have. So I'm going to diffuse this a bit by going into my shadow capture material options. I'm going to turn up the diffuse option, and we should see it start to blur. So first off, I'm going to turn off the accept shadows only. And then in my light, I'm going to double click, and here I could change the color, so you can see the text goes red. If I wanted a red light, and I can move that through the color spectrum. I can also adjust things like the intensity. So I'm just going to leave it white again to start with. I can also adjust the intensity, so the more intense, the brighter the effect on the material. And I can also affect the shadow diffusion. So I'm just going to turn it up a bit, and we should notice my shadows become a bit blurrier. Also going to turn down the darkness, so they're not as dark. So you can see I've created a text shadow with my text object, which has been placed in my 3D world. What I'm going to do next is scroll back through the footage, so you can see the text object still appears over the top of the footage, even though it's tracked to that ground as we pass around the corner. So we're going to fix that up later. The next thing I'm going to do is go back to my motion tracker by clicking on my footage. If I change to the show track points 2D to 3D, it should bring up my points again. This time we're going to add a solid object in, so I'm just going to pick a place on the wall that looks fairly in line with the plane of the wall. So I think I might go back to the side. Yeah, I'm going to pick this one here. I'm going to create solid. And that creates a solid like a solid object, which I can now edit. So you'll notice it comes up, and I can transform it and change it and things like that too. But to begin with, I'm just going to get its orientation correct. So you can see again, I can rotate it in all 3 planes. But I'm just going to get it sitting almost parallel to the top of the wall. Alright, so to edit my track solid, I'm actually going to pre-compose it. And what this is going to allow me to do is remove the solid color and replace it with something else. So this makes a new composition inside my composition. Now in here I can go in, and I'm just going to delete the track solid and replace it with an image of a crack that I want to appear on my wall. So now if I go back into my composition, you'll see a crack appearing on my wall. I'm then going to adjust the rotation of this crack. So I'm just going to play with its orientation a bit and rotate it around until I'm happy with the direction. Also want to turn down the opacity a bit, just so it looks like it's blending more into the wall. So I've got that 3D object there. We're going to create one more object on the wall. So this one we're going to create around the corner. So again, I'm going to go back to my original footage layer, have that selected, go into my effect controls and just change my show track points to get them back. And this time I'm going to select one on the brick wall. And this time I'm going to create a solid and adjust its position. Now at the moment I can see it's got a shadow, so I've got to go into my material options and I will play with that again later once I put an image in. So I'm going to pre-compose this one again, press OK, double click, delete the green solid, and again I'm just going to put a picture in there. Now I'm actually going to scale this picture down to make it fit inside my solid, because I hadn't changed the solid in the original. So you can see it's in there, but it's not looking great at the moment. So I'm just going to double click on my solid again, transform, and adjust the scale. So you can see it's only taking that clipping of the image. So to fix that, I need to go back in and shrink it down. Yeah, I've distorted it a bit there, but I'm not too worried for this demo. Now you can see it's still quite dark, so that's to do with it, because I've created it, it's still accepting shadows and light. So I'm actually going to turn off light, and that'll bring back my original image. Then I'm free to scale that up. So I'm just going to drag it out and try and reposition it a bit. Now you can see here, I'm probably actually doing it the wrong way, because I think you'll see this actually moves it off the wall. So when doing this, you probably have to be a bit more careful. But I've grabbed that and I think I've actually moved it off the plane. And we'll find that out when we start playing with our layer mask. So I'm just going to turn down the opacity, so it looks like it's been printed on the wall. Right, so now you can see there's 3D objects that have been created, but they're still appearing in my top layer of footage. So I'm going to hide them behind a duplicate layer. So I'm just going to duplicate this layer of footage. So I can either drag footage down from the project window at the top, or I can duplicate it using the shortcut keys, which I think is Control D. And then I'm just going to drag that to the top layer. Alright, so now I've got the original footage again. However, you can see the outlines of the different effects still appearing. It's still there, just so I can flick on and off. So what I'm going to do now is create a mask on the top layer that only shows part of the original footage. So you can see if I'm creating this, it's going to reveal some of my object. So you can see on the right, the crack in the walls come back, and part of the T is showing that's hidden around the corner. So I'm just going to move that around. So you can see the crack there, and you can see part of the T. And as I move the mask, different things happen. So as I move around the corner, you can see that's hiding, essentially cutting out the top layer of footage, so I'm only showing what's inside that mask. So I need to animate the mask path to improve the look of this so that it follows around the wall. So what I'm going to do is find that first keyframe. Now this is a bit of a tricky one, because if I just slide it here, I don't think it's actually going to do it properly. But it'll tween the mask between those two locations. Now because my camera isn't necessarily just moving in a straight direction, that's where we're going to have problems. So we're going to have to set a few more keyframes. So I'm going to select my mask. This time I'm just going to move it bit by bit. So select it. I'm going to move it back so that it's kind of hugging the wall. Now I can affect my mask shape as well, so you can see I'm still going to have to add in more. So I'm going to go a little bit by a little bit and just adjust the shape. Now this isn't perfect, I could go in and change the shape itself. I'm just going to play with this a little bit by a little bit, and you can see it will gradually reveal the word text and my shadow as I get around the corner. So subtle changes. Just bit by bit. You can see it's not perfectly hugging the wall there. This is where I could go frame by frame if I had to. And I also need to adjust the shape because it's not perfect at the top. You can see it's pretty much hiding most of the text. As I get around the corner. Now once I get to a point where I'm around the corner and the full word is revealed, you can see I'm not doing it perfectly here. I probably should redraw this mask. Or I could add some more vertexes to it as well. But for the time being, I'll just stick with what I've got. So I'm just going to drag this around this corner, and you'll see it's gradually revealing the word text till it's completely out. And you can see the shadows coming out too. So once I get around that corner, I want to move it completely out of the way so that I've no longer got a shadow and it's no longer blocking any of my objects that are in my scene. I've also just noticed that my image in the background is actually off the wall, which I would need to go back and fix afterwards. But that gives you a basics into 3D camera tracking and masking.